broadcast in our series. And I know it takes a little while for the people who are joining us to get all in here live. They come in a little bit at a time. It can be up to a 2-minute delay, they tell me. And so if you've listened to the other broadcasts, I might be in mid-story by the time you join. And so while we're giving them a chance to filter in, I just was wondering what some of you have seen for some of the creative ways that people are making the best of this downtime that we have at home. And I always love to hear those stories. By the way, if it's your first time on the Zoom, there is a chat box at the bottom, and there is also a Q&A. So if you want to chat with each other, you can do that over on the side, and I glance over as time allows. Although today we've got a packed session, so I'm not sure how much glancing over I'll do, but I do want to alert you to the Q&A section, which I will be checking. So if a thought pops in your head and you want to stick it in there, please do that. So anyway, I'm always looking for what are the creative things that people are doing. And a friend of mine shared yesterday that her adult sister had a birthday last week, and they did a drive-by birthday party. So her neighbors and friends drove by in cars and honked and waved. And then she even had small goodie bags made that she tossed out and into the car windows of the people who were passing by. There's a little girl across the street who pushed her bubble maker past as part of the parade. And so making do with the best that we can during this time is fantastic. And so hopefully by now everybody has filtered in and we are ready to get started with some content. So welcome. And today we're going to be talking about, as always, smart communication with our teams. At the time of this recording, most of our states have been closed down at stay-home orders for about a month. And now that we're hearing that some governors have decided to stay open for business within the next week or so, which is fantastic news for our economy and a little bit scary because of the unknown behavior of the virus. So I'm not here to turn this into a political debate, but someone did tell me a line yesterday that I thought was so funny. I hadn't heard it before. Maybe you have. I haven't heard it, but I had to share it here because it cracks me up. And here's what the line said. I think it was a meme, and it said, "This partial all clear is kind of like offering an okay to pee section in our swimming pools." Isn't that fantastic? That is exactly what it makes me think of. And although I am laughing at the symbolic accuracy of the statement, our current situation certainly is not humorous. And we have over 100 people who registered to come to this webinar. Thank you for those who are attending live, or maybe you're watching it on the rebroadcast, which is great. But I looked at the people I saw coming and recognized your industry by the nature of your emails. And we have such a wide selection of people who are here, some serving in the essential fields where you're right now and have all along been trying to provide great customer service. And we have others who are anxiously awaiting that long runway we talked about before when you can get back to business. The one thing I'm really serious about, all laughing aside, is we have to get our teams ready to communicate. And if you have watched my broadcast already, you know that I am a big fan of the sequences of 3, and today is no exception. So whether you manage others, and that's what you're here to find, is maybe a video you can show to your team so that it's as if I'm talking directly to them, please feel free to use it that way. Or maybe you are one of my solopreneurs on the line, and you are ready to get ramped back up with your own mindset and the words you would use. So the 3 things I'm going to cover today are things that I want to encourage you not to say to customers. That's just as important as the things, number 2, the things I hope you will say to customers. And then finally, what I believe your staff needs to hear. So let's get started. We're going to start with the not. Now, last week, I went to my favorite local grocery store. I went in masked and I went in with gloves, both which I personally feel are important. But when I got to the checkout line, the person checking me out and the person packing my groceries were both 2 young men, very polite. But while they were working on my groceries, they were having a conversation between each other about how did they think this was a hoax or is it not a hoax? And one of them made the comment that he felt that all the people walking in with their gloves and masks were just making fools of themselves. Hello, I'm standing right here. It was as if I was invisible. It not only aggravated me that they would choose to express their personal opinions in front of customers, it made me feel a little foolish that I'm doing what I'm doing, and I shouldn't be made to feel that way. So this week, when it was time for the once a week essential errand, you guessed it, I chose one of our other grocery stores. That's the choice I get to make. I get to vote with my feet. And this is an example where it's not that these young men aren't trained to do the job correctly. They know how to ring up the groceries. They know how to get my Super Saver fuel card. They know how to pack the bags. They've been trained to do the job. But I wish that the management was training them on the things we don't want to be saying. So my first assignment under the knot is don't offer your personal opinion in the workplace in front of customers. When you're punched in, you represent the company. So save those opinions and those conversations for the break room, or better yet, please save it for when you're punched out. And the second thing is the concept of show timing. If you've been in one of my sessions, I know you've heard me talk about this, but at this particular time, it bears repeating. My background was in healthcare, and our facility was known for its customer service. I worked there for 18 years, and that's how I became a professional speaker on customer service, is because we were so well known for it. Other people started calling and saying, other industries saying, hey, could you send somebody over to teach us what you guys are doing? My doctor at the time looked around and said, hey, Laurie, you like to talk, you go. And that's how I became a speaker. And one of our key things that we taught every new employee is the concept of show timing. What that means is when the lights go on and the doors unlock, it's showtime. And just like an actor who steps out on stage from behind the curtain, whatever was going on back there, the arguing, the fussing, all that stuff that happens behind the curtain. When you step out, you've got a role to play and lines to say, so the audience enjoys their experience. An actor, even in elementary school, doesn't step out of his or her character, looks at the audience and says real things. They stay in that character. And that is definitely what we want in the show timing spiel. Not show timing mode, and the show timing mindset is to stay incredibly focused on the task at hand and use the words that show that you are on point and on script. And then the third one under the not category is no need to share your negative experiences during the stay home order. So I know today on the call, I've got people who represent banks, insurance companies, and one or two financial planners. And anybody else on the call who would put themselves in the service industry similar to those, I'm talking to you right now, because here's what I can picture happening. Let's create this scenario of I'm meeting with my banker to make financial decisions. I'm stressed, the future of my income is uncertain, and I'm looking for advice and empathy and a professional interaction. And instead, I sit down with my banker, Tanya, and she starts a conversation like this. Boy, did we have it rough at our house during the stay home. You know, I got 3 kids all under the age of 16, and we're trying to homeschool them. It was just a disaster. And first this happened, and then she tells the story, and then that happened, and she tells part of that story. She goes on and on for just say a couple minutes. And then she says, and then I come back here and they're making us work these crazy hours to take care of all you people. If I didn't need this job so bad, I would just quit. Now, you might be laughing and thinking I'm over dramatizing this scenario, but I'm not. Because for over 15 years, our company has secret shopped places. And we haven't done it during the virus, but we ran into examples like this over and over again when we secret shopped. People who would complain to us about what was going on in their personal life. I tell a story in my book about getting an expensive massage one time on vacation. And the entire time I was getting the therapy, the service, the massage therapist was telling me about a terrible childhood, an abusive mother, and now an abusive husband. And all of her bad energy was coming out of her fingers and into my body. And yet I'm expected to pay a couple $100s for this service when it's time to leave. I was so aggravated. And I use that example all the time. No matter what your product or service, when you are in that showtime mode of giving, of selling, of producing, we need to be focused on what that customer need is. So I want the banker, the insurance person, the financial planner to be all about the empathy and the listening and finding out what it was like for me during the stay home order, not sharing with me what you've been going through. I hope that makes sense. All right, now let's move on to what I hope you will say. Oh, this is a good section. I'm excited about this. So last week, and we do this twice a week, we try to buy a takeout meal from one of our locally owned restaurants, support them where we can. And so on Friday or Saturday night of this last weekend, we chose a small Italian restaurant in our town. I went over to do the pickup. And when I got there, it was the only car in the parking lot, of course. I gloved and masked, and I walked in. The place was dark, except about 4 little hanging down lights above the bar. And the man who owned the place, a young gentleman, turned around and he was so enthusiastic to see me. And he says, and I quote, "Hey, thanks for keeping the lights on." And he points up to these 4 low lit lights. He found a way to use humor. And then he said, "Please come back and dine in as soon as we reopen." It's fantastic. In just a couple sentences, he used humor, connection, appreciation, and the request to buy again. 5 stars goes out to this gentleman. The restaurant's name is Fanaticos in DeKalb, Illinois. And I have to send out just a thumbs up for him because he wasn't robotic and he showed appreciation that we had chose to give patronage to a locally owned establishment. So the first bullet under what I hope you will say is what I like to call positive positioning statements. I've got a whole chapter of this on my book, in my book, The 10-Cent Decision, How Small Change Pays Off Big. And I believe that you can make a huge impact on your company if you could master positive positioning. I believe that long before we were dealing with the virus issues. And so here's an example how the gentleman from Fanaticos could go one step farther. I know what you're saying, Laurie, you just gave him 5 stars and now you want him to do more? Yeah, I want one more step. And it sounds like this. Hey, during our time of being closed, we've updated our menu. Here's a printout of it. Take a look because we're really excited about it. And we want to make sure that you come back and try out the new menu. Could he go one step further and asked if I wanted to give my email address so they could zip us a note to let us know when they've reopened? Because maybe we won't realize it through the newspaper or through a radio ad or however else they're going to tell people that they're open again. He certainly doesn't need to do all those steps, but I want your brain going a little bit and thinking. I have today many travel advisors on the line. Thank you for coming back again. You guys have been loyal listeners to this podcast. I'm talking to your industry right now. You might want to say something like this. So the one thing I was reminded of during this no travel period is how much joy we experience in planning a trip. What dream can we start working on for you today? Now, if that sounds a little too scripty or you don't like some of the words I chose, then pick one that's natural for your personality. But what I want to point out are highlight a few of the words in my sentence. Reminded of, joy, experience, dream, start working. When we pull those key words from that sentence, it starts to create emotion. Yeah, I would like to do that. I might have said this last week, I can't remember, but just recently over dinner, my husband and I were longing over where we'd like to go next because we love to travel. And he said, is it too early for us to start thinking about our next trip? And the answer is, of course, it's not too early. Let's do it because it entertains us during this time period. Even though we may not be in a position to book it today, we can dream about it today. And so I want all the travel agents on board to start crafting your positive positioning statements that are true to your industry. And by the way, if you want me to take a look at those, if you want me to give you some feedback, email me. I'm happy to take a look at it. Laurie@laurieguest.com. Easy to find, and I'm happy to respond. All right, let's move on. I also want you to think about connecting in the moment by speaking in real time, not robotic, and add humor where it's appropriate. Now, let me explain what I mean by real time. Real time means I'm not kicking in script number 29, that I am real in the moment. So I'll give you a rather sad example. I've mentioned before, my father passed away about a year ago right now. And I drew the short straw with my brother and had to call the different places where we either had appointments or insurance coverage of different places where we needed to say that he had passed. It's a long and difficult task and nobody wants to do it. But one of the places I called is a type of organization where they must get calls like this all day long. And I can understand why it would become robotic. But when I called, this young woman picked up. I told her what I was calling for, and then she said, and I am not embellishing, it's exactly how she said it. It sounded like a script, a really bad one. She said, "At this time, may I offer you my condolences?" That's how she said the word, like it was part of a jingle. Condolences? Why is she saying it like that? She had a complete disconnect. A real-time response would sound like this. "Gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. I thought this was a tough call to make. Well, let me make sure I have all the information correct." See how that sounds real time, bringing the energy to match what the situation is? Extremely important. So let me give an example. There's a bunch of you on the line today that are in the park, rec, and tourism category. I want to focus on those of you who are reopening gyms. If you listen to my earlier broadcast, you're on one of the short runways. I think as soon as we get the all clear, the 3 biggest places people will go are restaurants, workout facilities, and salons. Not necessarily in that order. I think it'll be salon, workout, restaurant. No, I think it'll be salon, restaurant, workout. Either way, workout places, you got to be ready to go. And I think you have the opportunity to add some humor. Creativity plus humor equals connection. So my park and rec people and my YMCAs and all that type of thing, can you hear yourself saying as I walk in the door, so Laurie, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad you miss us, right? A little bit of teasing in there, especially if you have rapport with me already as a patron. What about this one? So be honest, what did you miss more, us or the elliptical? I posted a meme last week. Actually, I think it might be going out today, but I wrote it last week that I said that my favorite thing about the virus in the month of April is I no longer got the weekly emails from my gym saying, sorry, we missed you. Right? Because every week that I don't work out, an auto email comes. If I haven't scanned my chip, it magically knows. I don't know if they're shaming me into working out or what, but all of a sudden those stopped in April because nobody can go, right? There's some humor in there that can be used. A local salon in our area, a Studio One, I just saw this today, as a matter of fact, that they have hats that they've made, and it says, make America beautiful again, and then their logo underneath it. And you can buy those hats from them and wear them around until they can open for business. Brilliant, Jane. Brilliant, brilliant idea. And they are taking the proceeds and donating it to a local charity. Really smart, keeping their name out there. All right. I have another example. I want you to be thinking about what your message was before the virus and how does that tie in today. So for example, I have a professional organizer on the line today. Her and I've had several conversations about her business. And to be honest, it was tough to get people to understand the value of her product and service before the virus. There is a huge benefit to having a personal organizer. I have had one myself, life-changing for me. But her job is to convince a buyer that they need that. Now you add the virus on top of it, or the past virus time, it becomes possibly even more challenging. So I think it would be inappropriate for her to say what she's thinking. All right. Sometimes I tell you, say what you're thinking in real time. And in her case, what she might be thinking is, why don't you understand what a difference this would make for your life? Okay, that's an attacking statement. She's saying what she's thinking, and we can't do that. But we can take the thought and we can twist the words a little bit and make it work better. So here's what I wrote for her. So what area of your home or business is causing you the greatest stress now when it comes to being organized? Are there times when you feel you could use a little help getting it all figured out? Who doesn't want help getting things figured out? It's not as simple as pulling boxes and putting labels on them. She's got a whole system she puts in place. She has to make me understand that as a buyer. May I share with you the type of success my clients achieve when they follow my 3-step process to pivot the problem? See, everybody likes it when there's a formula, when you have a process, as long as you can back those words up with the real thing. And then the third thing under the will category is I hope you will appreciate people, that they stuck with you during a difficult time, that they've returned to you now that you've opened your doors. Very important. All right. And now we move on to my last category, which is what I believe the staff need to hear. Wow, that's going to be so critical. Even those that you have been providing essential services all along, your staff needs to hear things. So my 3 things under this category is reset of service levels, hope, and appreciation. Let's start out with reset the service levels. Another large group of signups this week, which I'm so glad to see you guys, are those who are involved in the electric co-ops, both in Iowa and in Indiana. I've spoken for both of those industries recently, and you have a very challenging job in front of you. And I'm thinking the reason that you signed in is you're looking for some of those great words, right? Well, I think it is really critical that the leaders of the organization make sure that everybody has the current rules and that they're consistently expressed. So let me give everybody some examples. You guys know this, but the other ones on the line, I want them to understand. 2 big things are happening right now, at least in Indiana, with their electric co-ops. One, there is a ban on disconnection. which means no matter what, just like in the winter, you can't have your service disconnected. So that may encourage some people just not to pay their bill at all. And so some of the conversation you might have with them is, while you won't face a disconnect, this is not a wave of your fees. And to avoid a large balance building, let's work out a payment plan where you can just pay something every month. And we also have resources available which can help. Now, I know you guys know this, but my question is, are you all saying it the same way? Not to sound robotic, like a doll that you pull a string and he says, there's a snake in my boot. He says the same thing every time. That's what I mean by robotic. I want you to use your own language, but I want you to have the same answer. When we secret shop places, sometimes we will call multiple times at different shifts and pose the same problem. Find out if we get the same answer. And when we don't, that's a ding. For example, I know they're not listening right now, but I wish the airlines would do this. I have a friend who called and was able to get a refund on a particular flight. And then she called back the next day to request the same thing on a different flight and was told that wasn't possible. She had to go round and round and round. And what she ultimately did was hang up, call the next day, got it approved. In other words, it's inconsistent administration of the new rules, of the new challenges. So my question for you is, are any of the rules different now, coming back? And the staff have to be almost rebaptized into, what is it that we do? What do we do? How do we deliver it? What are the boundaries? Because if everybody's putting their own 2 cents in and going at it without an official plan, we're going to have inconsistent delivery. We're going to have a lot of issues with that. So reset your service levels and have a conversation about it. My second thing was hope. By banding together, we can look for silver linings. I'm talking about internally. Now, this might be the motivational speaker side of me talking, but I do believe there are some good, exciting silver lining moments in almost every industry out there, regardless of when you're coming back into play. So today on the call, I have some speakers, some trainers, some consultants. You might be solopreneurs that are trying to figure out, where do you fit back into this? And I'm going to encourage you, as we talked about before, to look for what pivots can you make? Where can you find an energy builder that's inside what you do? Can you do it differently than anybody else has been doing it? Can you tweak it just a little? And then where can you find the humor? In fact, just before this call, this is a little bit different than consultants, but it falls in the same category. An email came through, and this is from the college hunks of Des Moines. Let me explain. These are young men who come in moving trucks and they clear out apartments and dorm rooms and things like that. We needed to hire them when my son suddenly got a job in Washington, D.C. and had less than 24 hours to get there. So he was not able to come and help us move. So we needed, well, 2 hunks to come and do it. And so that's how I got on their mailing list. And I've stayed on it because whoever's doing their marketing knows how to have some creativity. So even though I'm in no need for the market, I haven't discontinued my subscription, or I should say the emails. I haven't stopped the emails. Let's think about that for a second. How good does your advertising have to be that even though I no longer need you, I don't even have someone who lives in that town, I haven't disconnected your messaging? That's saying something. Well, here's the message that came across today. It's a big picture of their logo with a character drawing of a hunk. And next to it, it says, schools closed, sports canceled, flights delayed, countries quarantined, college hunks, we ride at dawn. This is clever. And I'm asking those of you that are in those service industries, like my speakers, trainers, and consultants, what message can you give and how can you tweak the way that you're delivering things? As you have helped students get into college, some of you are in that field, as you're helping them figure it out, they must have a whole new world to navigate because everything must be turned on its head. And so there's a spot for you to slide in. My speaker colleagues were finding ways to do things online that we've never done before and never wanted maybe to do before, but yet people have gotten so creative. And I love that. And my third thing in this category is appreciation. I talked about it briefly last week, but I want to repeat it. Appreciation is the gasoline between paychecks. It's the best thing you can do, and it costs you absolutely nothing. What does that sound like? Your staff needs to hear, thank you for being here during this time. I know there's times when you wished you could have been home quarantined with your own family, but you came and you did what needed to be done. I know that we talk a lot about our healthcare workers. Thank you so much to all the healthcare workers, but they're not the only people who have done essential duties. Back to my electric co-op group, there are guys out there all the time making sure that you have the service that you need. We're still here is a message that you've been putting out, and that's a good one. And it's an important one to put out. Before I get ready to go to my final comments that I want to say, I want to make sure I'm going to check real quickly. If you have any questions for me, now's the time to put those in there. And I'm going to glance really quickly and see if we have anything in the chats to share. Here's something. Philip says, if you are at a bar or restaurant and ask the potential client if you can buy them a drink and they say, no, thank you, but you insist, then they say they're sober 6 years. How can you back out of that negative energy? Oh, that's a really good question. And so I would encourage to change the question on the front end, because I think that that is a common scenario that really can fall on people. So instead of saying, can I buy you a drink? I would turn and say, is there a beverage you'd like to join me in? Is there a beverage I can treat you to while we chat? If you were with me, I'm not a recovering alcoholic, but I don't necessarily love to have a drink when I'm working. So if you and I were meeting at a bar restaurant for lunch and I am your client, if you said to me, is there a beverage I can treat you to? You know what I'd say, Philip? Yeah, I'll take a Diet Coke with a lemon. And now we both have avoided the situation, because refraining from alcohol may not be just an addiction issue. It might just be a personal choice. I want to keep my wits about me when I'm meeting with you, Philip. And so changing the question that doesn't get you in that corner would be my advice. This is funny. Philip also added that my gym said they recalibrated the scales for when clients return. I love that. And even if they didn't, even if you don't want to do that, you guys, you could put a sign on it that says, don't worry, we thought about recalibrating the scales. Don't be too hard on yourself. This is where we're getting that humor that's going in there. All right. And then Becky added, do you have any recommendations for people in the wedding industry helping couples during this time of not knowing what we can and can't do? Great question. As a matter of fact, we have a postponed wedding in our family. My husband's niece had a May 2nd wedding. And so we're all very disappointed that that has to be postponed. But I think that some of the ways that she has been handled by her client or by her vendors is very good. And that is, let's go ahead and pick a new date and begin the replanning with the understanding we might have to move it again. We are in this with you. We will move it and change it and tweak it as many times as you need us to. Now, have you made any changes in how you'd like the party to go? So redirecting it as quickly as you can, acknowledging what you can do. And I'm making that up off the top of my head. Maybe you can't do some of those things I just said, but I assume that everybody has to remain flexible during a challenging time. There also, I would be on the look for all kinds of creative ideas. I would be scouring the internet for all the different ideas that you could even put into a creativity book that shows the different things that people can try. Most of the time we connect with new and fresh ideas. Same way with my travel advisors. The idea of virtual traveling right now is a fun thing. I know that that doesn't give you income today, but you're keeping me top of mind. You're keeping me in the queue, so to speak, for when it is time to get that checkbook back out again. Thank you so much for putting stuff into the chat. I love having you guys here. I'm going to take you on my homeward stretch. By the way, all of you who were pre-registered, don't forget, you're getting a great bonus item. I'm actually pretty excited about this. It is a videotape bonus item, and it shows you some thumbs up and some thumbs downs, experiences from the road when it comes to the topics that we're talking about, whether that be positive positioning or knowing how to show time. So that's going to be coming to you within the next 24 to 48 hours. So please watch for that in your email. And I'd love feedback on whether you enjoyed that video as well as this. So let me take you to my homeward stretch. Before I give you a parting thought, I do want to tell you what I'm really excited about. Remember, I just said, look at how you can pivot. What can you do that keeps you ramped up and going and giving you a sense of hope while we wait for this to unfold? We can't make predictions, but we can control our energy. So for me, I love to try and give content that matters when you need it. And as some of you know, we have an online guest encounters online clubhouse. It is filled with all kinds of customer service, help and guidance, and has a curriculum that goes with it. And you can use it almost like staff meetings in a bottle, where you can use that for your trainings. But to make it quick and easy for so many of the rest of you who may not want the whole platform, we have bundled together what I call six-pack series. So they are theme specific, and we'll tell you more about that next week, but there are 3 sets of them. So in other words, 3 six-packs available. I got so excited as we started to pull those together because I think they're quick, easy, very inexpensive, and you can use it to reboot everybody when they need it. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you watch my social channels. In the next week, we'll be posting where they're at and how you can get them. We're just putting the final little touches on them, and we'll have them ready for sure by this time next week. And so you can just drop me a line that you're interested, or check those social media channels that'll be posted in the rebroadcast of this video. I want to give you resources you can use now. Same way with this series of broadcasts, there's going to be 6 of them total by the time we're done. And I want you to be able to string all those together and show them to the team if you need to. And so here's my final thought for you. Smart communication doesn't just happen. You don't just open your doors and be open for business again without really thinking through the anticipated challenges and what are the words you can use to make a better connection. For those of you who are leaders, you must plan your dissemination of this information as carefully as you're watching your cash flow. And as a staff person, you must focus on what your customer needs to hear and feel and guard against being a crashing river of emotion that's unrelated to the dialogue with your guests. Don't bring your stuff to the table. Focus on them instead. The 3 most important takeaways from today's broadcast is remember how to showtime, consider positive positioning, and standardized information on any of your adjusted rules. See you next week for our final broadcast when I will share the 3 steps to reset your service levels, and it will include a worksheet that you can download. Once you fill it out, you'll have the answers you need, regardless of your product or service. Hope you can join us. Thanks for being here.